Please take your seats. I request everyone to please take your seats. It's past 10 a.m. in the morning, and we need to begin our morning session. Dear colleagues, namaste. And seeing the large delegation from Japan, konnichiwa. Before we resume our session, I would like to inform you of the outcomes of the 6th meeting of the Bureau. Yesterday, we have opened General Item 8, which will remain open, and have examined Item 8A. Under Item 8B, we have progressed swiftly and reviewed 14 nominations, including one that had been submitted on an emergency basis. 13 of them were inscribed on the World Heritage List, including one inscribed simultaneously on the list of World Heritage in Danger. Allow me to congratulate once more, on behalf of the entire committee, all nominating state parties for enriching the World Heritage List. Today, we will have other nomination files to examine. The list can be found on the updated calendar posted by the Secretariat on the 46th session web page. The procedure regarding the Sado Island Gold Mines, Japan, was also recommended by the Bureau, and we will come to it in a few minutes. I trust that the members of the committee will agree to this course of action, which is possible thanks to the extraordinary spirit of compromise of the state parties concerned, which I wish to salute on behalf of the committee. Furthermore, I would like to recall that concerning Item 8B, after we have completed the examination of nominations, we will need to examine 13 minor boundary modifications. Dear colleagues, the Bureau also heard a progress of work of the Working Group on the Budget by its chairperson, Ms. Chiara Franco of Italy. I am pleased to inform you that the group has concluded its work and that the recommended draft decision will be shortly transmitted to all members of the committee. Consequently, there will be no more meeting of the group. The Bureau also discussed the timetable of work and the remaining items to be examined. The Secretariat is working on a proposed revised timetable of work and will update the committee shortly in this regard. Thank you very much. We shall now turn to the nomination of the Sado Island Gold Mines, Japan. As I stated at the start of yesterday's meeting, Japan has informed the Bureau of the committee that an agreement had been reached among the interested state parties with respect to this nomination. I therefore propose that this nomination be examined by the committee without debate. I shall first give the floor to the ADG Culture on behalf of the Secretariat and to ECOMOS to present the nomination. We shall thereafter turn directly to the consideration of the draft decision. As you know, an amendment to draft decision 8B18 proposed by Bulgaria was circulated yesterday to members of the committee 24 hours in advance of our examination of the item. I should underline that this amendment is an integral part of the agreement reached by the interested state parties. Under the proposed amended decision, the committee would decide to inscribe the property on the World Heritage List under Criterion 4, and a footnote would be included in Para 4E, which would take note of a statement to be made by Japan as regards the interpretation and presentation strategy and facilities referred to in that paragraph. The text of the statement by Japan was also circulated to members of the committee yesterday. I should point out that for Japan and the Republic of Korea, the English version of the statement would be the binding version, since it was the one agreed upon by Japan and the Republic of Korea. When we move to the adoption of the draft decision, I shall give the floor to the representative of Bulgaria on the amendment. I will propose that the committee adopt the draft decision as a whole with the proposed amendments. I trust that the committee will be able to adopt the draft decision as amended by consensus. After the adoption of the draft decision, and if the committee accepts the amendments proposed, I shall give the floor to the representative of Japan, who will make the statement I referred to in the English language, which shall then be reproduced in the summary records of the present session. I shall then give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea. Given the nature of these statements, I have exceptionally accepted to grant 4 minutes for each of these statements. I trust that the members of the committee will agree to this course of action, which is possible thanks to the extraordinary spirit of compromise of the state parties concerned, which I wish to salute on behalf of the committee. Are there any questions? I see none. Since I see there is a general agreement in the room to proceed in this manner, I will now give the floor to the ADG Culture, Mr. Ottone, on behalf of the Secretariat. Mr. Ottone, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to inform you that we received a factual error notification from Japan concerning the evaluation of the nomination of Sado Gold Mine Island, and this is on page 27 of both the English and French version of document inf.8b4. Before the committee starts the examination of this nomination, I would like, on behalf of UNESCO, to commend the remarkable spirit of cooperation which led the two state parties concerned to reach an agreement on this matter. Let me also take this opportunity to reiterate to all state parties my availability as the head of the culture sector to exercise my good offices to assist you in resolving matters relating to any of the UNESCO Culture Conventions falling under my purview, including as concern the work of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This is the presentation of the ICOMOS evaluation of Sado Island Gold Mines, Japan. The ICOMOS report can be found in document INF 8B1 on page 108 of the English version and page 106 of the French version. On this evaluation, ICOMOS has received a letter on factual errors and has acknowledged some of these errors. The Sado Island Gold Mines is a serial property located on Sado Island, some 35 kilometers west of the Niigata Prefecture coast. It is formed of 3 component parts covering 2 main mining areas, the Nishimikawa Placer Gold Mine and the Aikawa Tsurushi Gold and Silver Mine, illustrative of different mechanized mining methods of the Edo period to obtain gold and silver. The first cluster covers a large mining area used for placer gold mining, settlement areas, and several sections of waterways used for placer mining. The second cluster includes 2 component parts connected by a route today interrupted for a short section and corresponding to the Nishi-Ikari-Michi and Tsurushi-Michi Pass. The 2 component parts of the second cluster cover 2 different mining areas, the Tsurushi Silver Mine and the Aikawa Gold and Silver Mine area. The latter also includes part of the Aikawa Kamimachi town, in which the remains of the Sado Magistrate's office are found. The Sado Island gold mines are nominated as a serial property that bears witness to the most important gold mining operations that contributed to the stability of the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate during the Edo period. The mine's success is rooted in a management system that governed mining operations from a technical and social perspective and has been maintained for over 250 years. Despite some shortcomings in comparative analysis, ICOMOS considers that the nominated property deserves consideration for the World Heritage List as an exceptional mining ensemble and landscape that testifies to the continuation and perfection of unmechanized mining and processing technology in a period when elsewhere mechanization was spreading in the industry. Of the two proposed criteria, 3 and 4, ICOMOS considers that the only criterion 4 is demonstrated and supported by the surviving attributes. Initial issues of fragmentation of the component part at Nishimikawa area have been resolved through the evaluation process. Mechanized mining operations were carried out in the post-Edo period until the late 20th century, and some section of the nominated property also includes a post-Edo mining-related standing structure. A substantial cluster of standing post-Edo mining-related facilities in Aikawa Kamimachi town do not reflect in discernible way the mining technology and social cultural system of the Tokugawa shogunate or Edo period. Therefore, ICOMOS considers that the condition of integrity and authenticity could be met only if this delimited area is excluded from the nominated property and put in the buffer zone. The legislative protection at the national, prefectural, and Sado city levels seems to provide sufficient integrated protection to the nominated property. However, the protection system could be strengthened as suggested in the draft recommendations. In ICOMOS' view, the buffer zone of the Aikawa Tsurushi gold and silver mine should be extended offshore. As mining rights are still in force, an explicit commitment appears necessary from the mining rights holder not to reactivate commercial mining operation in the nominated property and buffer zones. The remains of the Edo period, mainly archaeological, are less visible than the standing structures of post-Edo mining and less understandable without explanations and presentation. And it is therefore essential to develop an interpretation and presentation program of the Edo period attributes and how they convey the proposed outstanding universal value. Here is a summary of the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposed outstanding universal value of the nominated property. And here is a summary of the ICOMOS evaluation of the conservation, protection, and management of the nominated property. ICOMOS, in this regard, considered that the revision of the plans needs to be adopted before comprehensive management plan is implemented, so as to ensure that provisions are consistent with the aim of sustaining the proposed outstanding universal value. To conclude, ICOMOS recommends that Sado Island Gold Mines, Japan, be referred back to the state party in order for it to modify the boundary to exclude a small area in the Aikawa Kamimachi town, expand the buffer zones of the Aikawa Tsurushi gold and silver mine component offshore, and provide explicit commitment from the mining right holders not to reactivate commercial mining within the nominated property or buffer zones. ICOMOS has also included further recommendation in the draft decision to aid the long-term conservation of the property, and these are outlined in full in the evaluation report and on these slides. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, ICOMOS, for your presentation. As agreed, we shall now turn directly to the consideration of the draft decision 46Com 8B.18. I would first now invite you to adopt the draft decision. But before doing so, I would like to ask the rapporteur if he has received any amendments on the draft decision proposed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour à vous et bonjour à toutes et à tous. Concernant les mines d'or de l'île de Sado au Japon, nous avons reçu un amendement soumis par la Bulgarie coécrit par la Jamaïque, la Belgique, le Kazakhstan, le Qatar, l'Italie, le Vietnam, la Zambie, le Sénégal, le Kenya, la Grèce, l'Inde, l'Ukraine, le Rwanda et le Mexique, soit un total de 15 pays. Monsieur le Président, si je me réfère à ce que vous aviez annoncé ce matin à la réunion du bureau, je suggère que la présentation de l'amendement se fasse par la délégation bulgare qui est l'autrice et le soumissionnaire de l'amendement. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Rapporteur. I shall give the floor to the representative of Bulgaria who had introduced the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. At the outset, we would like to express our gratitude to both the state parties of Japan and the Republic of Korea for having reached an understanding on the inscription of the Sado Island gold mines on the World Heritage List through sincere and close dialogue. We would also like to compliment the State Party of Japan for presenting an excellent dossier on this property. We also commend the excellent work conducted by the evaluation body. We have examined the nomination dossier and the additional information provided by the State Party, as well as the ICOMOS evaluation report. We have no hesitation in accepting that this property, which is formed of three components, the Nishimikawa Placer Gold Mine and the Aikawa Tsurushi Gold and Silver Mine, is an exceptional example of the continuity of manual mining and smelting technology in a period when mechanization was progressively being introduced elsewhere. Such an example of unmechanized mining methods make us realize that its OUV lies in the management system and social and work organization deployed by the Tokugawa shogunate, etc., which made it possible to extract and process considerable quantities of high-quality gold for global standards in the 17th century. We have also noted the ICOMOS evaluation report and agree with its acceptance of the property's OUV under criteria 4. ICOMOS have reported general satisfaction with the comparative analysis, the state of conservation, and the management framework. ICOMOS has made 3 recommendations concerning integrity and protection and management requirements. In this regard, we are pleased to note with satisfaction the state parties' responses to all of these recommendations. As recommended by ICOMOS, Japan has already excluded the area in Aikawa Kamimachi town corresponding to the zones identified as Shimo Yamanokami, Sakashita, Kitazawa, and Yajuro, and this area turned to be a part of buffer zone. Secondly, Japan has already expanded the buffer zone of the Aikawa Tsurushi gold and silver mine component part offshore in order to exclude any possibility of building offshore wind power plants within the eyesight from the viewpoint in the nominated property. And thirdly, Japan has also obtained an explicit commitment in writing from the holders of the mining rights not to reactivate commercial mining on the land of the nominated property and the buffer zone. We firmly believe that with these responses to the 3 recommendations, the nominated property now fully meets all the required conditions for inscription on the World Heritage List. Finally, in accordance with the understanding reached by both the state parties of Japan and the Republic of Korea, our proposed amendments to the draft decision also include the addition of a footnote to paragraph 4E, which takes note of the statement to be made by Japan regarding its interpretation and presentation strategy referred to in that paragraph. On the basis of these observations, we have submitted amendments to the draft decision 46-COM 8B18 Sado Island Gold Mines. We hope that all members of the committee will accept the decision by consensus. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you. As agreed, we shall proceed to the consideration of the draft decision as a whole as amended. May I take it that the committee accepts the draft decision with the amendments proposed by Bulgaria? I see no objections. I therefore declare draft decision 46-COM 8B.18 adopted. Let me congratulate Japan on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. As agreed at the start of our consideration of this nomination, I shall now give the floor to the representative of Japan for a 4-minute statement. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you all. Thank you for the opportunity to deliver this statement on behalf of the government of Japan. The Sado Island gold mines is an extraordinary example of the continuity of manual mining and smelting technology in the Asian context in a period until the mid-19th century, when mechanization was progressively being introduced elsewhere. It is an honor for the government of Japan that Sado Island gold mines has been inscribed as a World Heritage, which is of the outstanding universal value. Concerning 3 recommendations by ICOMOS, the government of Japan has already completed responding to all of them in full. In regard to the WHC's recommendation E, Japan has been engaging in close dialogue with the ROK to develop an interpretation and presentation strategy and facilities that comprehensively address the whole history of the Sado Island gold mines, including the workforce from the Korean Peninsula. Bearing in mind all the relevant WHC decisions as well as its commitments associated with these decisions, and sincerely remembering all the workers at the Sado Island gold mines, especially those from the Korean Peninsula, Japan will faithfully and thoroughly implement the recommendation and continue to make efforts to enhance the interpretation and presentation strategy and facilities that comprehensively address the whole history of the Sado Island gold mines in close consultation with the ROK. With a view to demonstrating its commitments to do so and its willingness to amicably resolve differing views with the ROK with regard to the Sado Island gold mines, Japan already installed new exhibition material relating to all the workers at the interpretation and presentation facility in the site to explain the severe conditions of their work and remember their hardship. A memorial event for all the workers at the Sado Island gold mines will also be held annually in the site. Taking this opportunity, allow me to briefly introduce some elements exhibited at the local facility in Sado. During the wartime, the National Mobilization Law and the National Requisition Ordinance and other relevant measures were introduced even in the Korean Peninsula. At first, open recruitment and then official placement were implemented with the involvement of the Government General of Chosen, an administrative organ in the Korean Peninsula established by Japan. Since September 1944, requisition of large workers to engage in tasks and imprisonment or fines were imposed against its violation. In the exhibition room, there are also data indicating that a higher percentage of workers from the Korean Peninsula engaged in dangerous tasks inside the mine shafts, such as rock drilling, shoring, and hauling. There are also a record of labor dispute over working conditions, a record of food shortage, and a record of a fatal accident. One record states that the average number of working days in a month was 28 days for those from the Korean Peninsula. Another record shows that there were escapes and imprisonment of the workers from the Korean Peninsula. Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the committee, the government of Japan expresses deep appreciation to all the members of the World Heritage Committee, including Bulgaria, who has kindly submitted the amendment, UNESCO Secretariat, and ICOMOS members for their kind cooperation towards the inscription based on their understanding of the outstanding universal value of this property. Now, Mr. Chair, please allow Mr. Hanazumi Hideo, Governor of Niigata Prefecture, to give a few words of appreciation for inscription.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Hanazumi, Governor of Niigata Prefecture. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone here today and to those who have given us unwavering support and dedication to the inscription. We will do our best to preserve and pass on this important heritage to future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As also agreed, I shall now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea for a 4-minute statement. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The government of the Republic of Korea has carefully listened to the statement just made by the government of Japan and wishes to highlight the following points therein. First, Japan has been developing an interpretation and presentation strategy and facilities that comprehensively address the whole history of the Sado Island gold mines and sincerely remembers all the workers, especially those from the Korean Peninsula. Second, in faithfully and thoroughly implementing the WHC recommendations, Japan will bear in mind all the relevant WHC decisions as well as its commitments associated with these decisions, and continue to make efforts to enhance the interpretation and presentation strategy and facilities that comprehensively address the whole history of the Sado Island gold mines in close consultation with ROK. Third, to demonstrate its commitment to do so, Japan already installed new exhibition materials relating to all the workers in the site to explain the severe conditions of their work and remember their hardship. Fourth, a memorial event for the workers will be held annually in the site. In regard to the second point just referred to, the government of the ROK would like to underline that Japan's commitments associated with the relevant WHC decisions include the statement made by Japan in 2015 relating to the inscription of the site of Japan's Meiji Industrial Revolution, which carries relevance and implication for this case, as both sites share a common history of mobilizing Korean workers during the wartime, at first through open recruitment and then official placement with the involvement of the Government General of Joseon, followed by requisition under the National Mobilization Law since September 1944, as confirmed by the Statement of Japan. The government of the ROK has consistently maintained that every history has its light and shadows, and heritage should be remembered for both its bright and dark sides. It is only natural that this is recognized by the ICOMOS recommendations and duly reflected in the WHC decisions. In light of the above, and considering the willingness of both the ROK and Japan to resolve relevant issues through mutual agreement with a far-sighted approach aimed at fostering future-oriented bilateral relations, the government of the ROK, after long and careful deliberations, has decided to join the committee's consensus decision to inscribe the Sado Island gold mines on the World Heritage List, while welcoming Japan's action to install exhibition materials prior to the committee decision, which helps dispel concerns in the ROK about its failure to deliver on previous promises. We expect that the government of Japan will fulfill its commitments made before this august body faithfully and thoroughly. The Republic of Korea expresses its deep appreciation for the chair's leadership and the cooperation and support of all the committee members and the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me congratulate once again Japan for the inscription of this property and both interested state parties for their extraordinary spirit of compromise. I now invite ICOMOS to present the nomination. We will wait for some time. Can I give the floor to the director of the WHC? You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Can I invite the committee members, please, to take their seats so that we can continue the examination of nomination? And I would also like to remind that if for congratulations and everything, please, there is a space outside. We would like to continue. Thank you.
I request committee members to please take your seats. I now invite ICOMOS to present the nomination of Beijing Central Axis, a building ensemble exhibiting the ideal order of the Chinese capital, China. But before that, I will give the floor to the Secretariat. Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We received a factual error notification concerning the evaluation of the nomination of the Beijing Central Axis, and this is to be found on page 9 of document INF 8B4. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This is the presentation of the ICOMOS evaluation of Beijing Central Axis, a building ensemble exhibiting the ideal order of the Chinese capital, China. The ICOMOS report can be found in document INF 8B1 on page 75 of the English version and page 70 of the French version. On this evaluation, ICOMOS has received a letter on factual errors. The central axis is defined by former imperial palaces and gardens, imperial sacrificial buildings, ancient city management facilities, ceremonial and public buildings, and central axis roads remain. The central axis originated in the Yuan dynasty that established Dadu, its capital, in what corresponds to the northern section of the axis. The nominated property also features later historical structures built during the Ming dynasty and improved during the Qin dynasty. The nominated property runs from north to south through the heart of the historical Beijing. It consists of an ensemble of historic buildings, monuments, archaeological sites that bear witness of the evolution to the city during the imperial dynastic system. The nominated property represents an outstanding testimony of the Chinese urban planning tradition, showcasing its evolution during the imperial dynastic system in its urban layout. It bears witness to the paradigm of the ideal capital city, based on Confucian principles stated in the ancient Caogongji, the book of the diverse crafts, influential in conceiving other capital cities in China and East Asia, such as defining the north-south axis and establishing a center to provide neutrality and harmony to society by means of symmetry and balance in the urban layout. The Beijing Central Axis exhibits an urban ensemble that provides a distinct urban pattern in world urban history. ICOMOS considers that the comparative analysis justifies consideration of the nominated property for the World Heritage List. Criterion 3 and 4 have been met, but criterion 6 has not been demonstrated. The key attributes of the nominated property are the layout of the axis, the physical structures and architectural styles that define it and testify of its development during the imperial dynastic system in China. The natural and historical urban setting of the axis, landscape sequences, visual corridors, key views from different points of the axis, the functions and traditions connected to each of the historical structure, which includes city management, urban government, and rituals. Although rituals conducted during the imperial dynastic periods are no longer practiced, the related festivities still performed in the central axis space can be considered attributes of the nominated property. On the other hand, ICOMOS does not consider that the Tiananmen Square complex and the Yongdingmen Gate are attributes of the proposed outstanding universal value. Nevertheless, they remain included within the boundaries of the nominated property. Conditions of integrity have been demonstrated. The authenticity of some of the proposed attributes has been compromised by remodeling and reconstruction. In particular, ICOMOS recommends that the Tiananmen Square complex remodeling and the Yongdingmen Gate reconstruction be presented in the interpretation of the nominated property. ICOMOS considers that the authenticity of the central axis has been nevertheless demonstrated. The boundaries and buffer zones are adequate to support the integrity of the nominated property, though some section of the axis roads might be vulnerable to development pressures. ICOMOS considers that the state of conservation of the nominated property is good and that the boundaries and buffer zones are adequate. Legal protection is comprehensive and includes laws for the protection of cultural heritage and planning framework for guiding heritage conservation and development. The management system is based on the Beijing Municipal Advisory and Coordinating Mechanism led by the Beijing Municipal Leading Group for building the National Cultural Center. Site-level management is coordinated by the Beijing Central Axis Conservation Center, which implements the conservation and management plan for Beijing Central Axis. Presentation and interpretation of the World Heritage property that form part of the Beijing Central Axis should be continued and reinforced. Proposed measures of urban planning and mitigation of existing and potential tourism impact need to be adequately enforced and adapt where tourism pressures to increase. To support long-term conservation, ICOMOS recommends that the involvement of the residents in the nominated property and buffer zone be ensured and continuous. Here is a summary of the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposed outstanding universal value of the nominated property. To conclude, ICOMOS recommends that the Beijing Central Axis, a building ensemble exhibiting the ideal order of the Chinese capital, China, be inscribed in the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 3 and 4, and has also included a number of further recommendations in the draft decision to support the long-term conservation of the property. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Greece, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to thank ICOMOS for this presentation. Greece welcomes the state party's nomination of an outstanding property. Beijing Central Axis is an ensemble of imperial buildings, urban management facilities, road remains along the Central Axis, contemporary public edifices, and public space. The dossier under discussion clearly shows the evolution of this axis since the Yuan dynasty in the 13th century. It is a historical continuum of time and space. The traditional philosophy and urban planning concepts which influenced the form of the ancient Chinese capitals continue to impact the planning of modern Beijing. In its evaluation, ICOMOS considers that the conditions of integrity of the nominated property have been met, and the authenticity of the nominated property as a whole has been demonstrated. The Tiananmen Square complex's planning and layout have followed the balance and the symmetrical pattern of Beijing Central Axis, of which the square is a solid, integral element. Suffice it to say that the National Museum of China and the Great Hall of the People face each other symmetrically on the east and west sides of the square. Tiananmen Square complex's architecture demonstrates China's determination to respect the past while exploring in innovating the style in the design of public spaces as it has been evolved through the centuries. As for the Yongdimen Gate, originally built in 1553 as a southern edge of the Peking Central Axis and dismantled in 1957, it was rebuilt in 2004, in the same location and at the original size, implementing the original design, techniques, and materials in accordance with the NARA document of authenticity. Both elements, the square and the gate, have been always considered by the 22 millions of Peking residents as an integral part of the Central Axis, a fundamental part of their country's history, and I would add, of their daily lives. Mr. Chair, distinguished committee members, Greece is convinced that the totality of the Peking Central Axis, with all its 15 elements, deserves to be acknowledged as having outstanding universal value. In order to reflect the above, we have submitted an amendment in the draft decisions text, clarifying beyond any doubt that all the elements included in the nomination file, without any exception, are of outstanding universal value. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lebanon, to be followed by Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Beijing Central Axis is the cumulative product of more than 7 centuries of history and has continued to evolve and exert an influence on the city's urban development. At the heart of the capital of Yuan, Ming, Qing, and modern China, Beijing Central Axis is a testimony to major historic events, including the end of China's more than 2,000 years of dynastic rule, the birth of China Republic, the establishment of the People's Republic of China. It has stood witness to the gradual historical transformation of the Chinese society from a dynastic system into a modern state. Hence, Beijing Central Axis should be considered based on the historic urban landscape approach, which sees and interprets the city as a continuum in time and space where countless population groups have left their mark and continue to do so today. In its additional recommendations, ICOMOS considers that both Tiananmen Square complex and the Yongdingmen Gate do not form attributes of the properties OUV. We cannot agree with such an interpretation. The historic urban landscape is the urban area understood as the result of historic layering of values and attributes, including the built environment, the open spaces, both historic and contemporary, the land use patterns and spatial organization, the perceptions and visual relationships. Tiananmen Square complex is a major component of the great urban ensemble organized along Beijing Central Axis, which has witnessed the historical continuity of Chinese tradition. During the Ming and Qing dynasties, the imperial square was a place for holding major celebration. In early 20th century, it was transformed into a major public area, and modern China has inherited and continued the tradition carried by the Axis throughout its history. How could we consider that such a major public space that is central to the spatial organization of Beijing Central Axis does not contribute to the properties OUV? As for the reconstruction of Yongdingmen Gate, although ICOMOS recognized that, quote, it has been undertaken based on detailed documentation and that it was widely supported by local population, unquote, it considers nevertheless that its authenticity is compromised. Such a conclusion seems to us inappropriate, since it expresses a narrow interpretation of the concept of authenticity, which contradicts the principles adopted in NARA documents. Hence, we agree with the amendment presented by Greece, sent to us yesterday by the rapporteur, which proposes to delete point 2 of ICOMOS' additional recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. The amendments have yet not been presented by the rapporteur, which I will be doing once member states are done by taking the floor. A large number of member states have raised their plates, so we'll give them the floor. And then I will go to the rapporteur, where I will ask him, does he have any amendments being presented? I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Zambia to be followed by Senegal. Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Beijing Central Axis displays distinct urban axis, layout, physical and architectural structures, corridors and symmetrical layout. Beyond this, Mr. Chairman, we also, the state part of Zambia appreciates the fact that, yes, ICOMOS has pointed out that the chairman Mao Square and Yondong gates, this being that is new infrastructure, they seem to contradict the expectations of ICOMOS, but the state part of Zambia is of the view that, when you look at the general layout of these structures, and also in terms of most of the features, they still conform to the original concept. And here we're talking of an idea, and this idea is about symmetry. And this idea of symmetry is what the People's Republic of China has demonstrated. And in terms of, culture is also evolutionary, and you cannot have all the structures look the same if they looked, if you look at the outlook of 17th century, you don't expect 20th century the structures to be modeled in the same manner. So the general aspect that the state part of Zambia is advancing is that the general layout plan or the idea of symmetry has been maintained. In terms of the general, outlook of the structure, it has also been maintained in terms of height. So we should not start, mutilating the authenticity of the site on the basis of these odd ideas. So what I want to start, rather to emphasize, Mr. Chairman, is that the state part of China has demonstrated the original idea, and these attributes, they are not supposed to be at the same level. They are supposed to be complementary. And most of all, Mr. Chairman, the state of, the condition of the site of the Beijing axis, it is okay. The boundaries are in coordination. The management plans and coordinating mechanisms are in place. The criterion number 3 has been met. Criterion number 5, has also been met. So at the end of the day, the state part of Zambia joins the state parties of Greece and Lebanon in terms of supporting the nomination, the inscription of this site as a World Heritage Site. I submit, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Zambia. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Senegal to be followed by Turquie. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal pense que le dossier présenté par la Chine est un dossier extrêmement solide et cohérent, et que les observations faites par la Grèce et le Liban sont tout à fait pertinentes. Les 15 éléments sont dans une ligne de cohérence qui traduit la continuité historique exceptionnelle de la Chine dans ce domaine et qui se traduit à Beijing. Nous pensons que les monuments et les paysages sont un tout qu'on ne peut pas désagréger. Sur la question précise de la porte, nous pensons que quel que soit l'avis de l'ICOMOS, il faut peut-être sortir d'un certain dogme autour de l'authenticité. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, si Notre-Dame de Paris est reconstruite, on va l'exclure de la liste? Je pose la question et je pense que la réponse sera non. Donc, je crois, avec mon ami de la Zambie, qu'il ne faut pas rester dans les dogmes et qu'il ne faut pas amputer le bien d'un de ces éléments constitutifs. Donc, je rejoins les collègues de la Grèce, du Liban et de la Zambie pour dire que la totalité de la liste doit être prise en considération. Merci.
Ça ajoute au consensus.
Oui, oui. Le Sénégal, bien sûr, s'ajoute et appuie.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I have yet not given the floor to the rapporteur and asked him the question, are there any amendments? But member states have raised their plates, so I'll give them the floor. I give the floor to Turkey, to be followed by Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dating back to the 13th...
Argentina, you have the floor.
No, señor presidente, habíamos pedido la palabra siguiendo el orden, pero parece que no habían visto nuestro cartel. No es una moción de orden, queremos hablar después de las delegaciones que estaban en la lista. Gracias.
I thought it was a point of order, and that is the reason I interrupted Turkey, because you were waving your nameplate like this. I see that the name of Argentina is indeed mentioned in that list, but it's mentioned after a particular member state that has been provided by the Secretariat. So I can only request a little bit of more patience. Thank you. Turkey, you may restart your statement, and sorry for the interruption.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Take two. Okay. Dating back to the 13th century, the Beijing Central Axis bears testimony to the historical process of Chinese society from the imperial dynastic system to the modern nation, and demonstrates a historical continuum of time and space. It is not surprising that each subsequent period leaves its own imprint on the historic city. The Tiananmen Square and the Yongdingmen Gate are an integral part of the Central Axis. In particular, the Tiananmen Square complex, located in the center of the nominated property, is a vital part of the urban layout and contributes to the OUV of the property, meeting criteria 3 and 4. The rebuilt Yongdingmen Gate, being built in its original location, using documentation from surveys undertaken in 1924 and 1944, before the demolition, identifies the location of the southern exit of the Beijing Central Axis, thus vital to our understanding of the Central Axis. Therefore, Turkey supports the amendment proposal of Greece regarding the deletion of paragraph 4D. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kazakhstan, to be followed by Argentina. Kazakhstan, you have the floor.
Dhanyavad, Chair. Distinguished Chair, esteemed delegates, namaste. I would like to add our voice in support of the amendments proposed by our Greek colleagues and backed by some other fellow members of the committee regarding the inscription of the Beijing Central Axis on the World Heritage List. According to the ICOMOS evaluation report, for which we thank them sincerely, the conditions of integrity for the nominated property have been satisfied and the overall authenticity of the property had been demonstrated. The Tiananmen Square complex's design and layout adhere to the balanced and symmetrical pattern of the Beijing Central Axis. The monument of the people's heroes and Chairman Mao's Memorial Hall are centrally placed on the axis, reflecting a classical Chinese style centered on the principle of choosing the center. Additionally, the National Museum of China and the Great Hall of People symmetrically face each other on the square's east and west sides. These architectural and landscape arrangements highlights China's modern efforts to innovate within the traditional national style of public space designs, even if we have some modern buildings presented there as well. As voiced by some of the previous speakers, the Yongdingmen Gate stays at its original site and was reconstructed using the original design techniques and materials following the NARA document on authenticity. Given these considerations, we agree with the amendment put forward by Greece and to delete paragraph 4D in the draft decision. This change aligns with the objective of accurately reflecting the historical and cultural significance of the Beijing Central Axis. In conclusion, Kazakhstan commends China's continuous efforts to preserve this important site and supports its inscription on the World Heritage List. These efforts will ensure the long-term preservation and appreciation of this important heritage site. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Argentina to be followed by Japan.
Gracias, señor presidente. Este comité está siendo muy diferente a otros que hemos tenido, en que inclusive hemos tenido disputas, nos hemos enfrentado. Este es el comité del consenso y la comprensión del trabajo de cada uno. Felicitamos a ICOMOS por su trabajo y aceptamos sus sugerencias, pero creemos que nosotros tenemos un valor muy importante, que es no solamente cumplir con nuestra misión, sino el mensaje que estamos transmitiendo. La plaza y la puerta constituyen una parte central del eje central de Beijing y son un símbolo para toda la humanidad, independientemente de la inscripción que se va a hacer de la totalidad del eje. No hay persona prácticamente en el mundo que no reconozca a esta plaza como un elemento indispensable en la historia de la humanidad. Por lo tanto, tenemos que tener en cuenta también la evolución y el conjunto como parte de un valor excepcional. El conjunto es excepcional y la evolución del ser humano son excepcionales. Y esta plaza es un elemento que demuestra esta evolución. Y queremos aprovechar el éxito de esta convención y lo que estamos aprendiendo en este comité, que es aprender a delegar, aprender a confiar. Entonces, con las sugerencias muy buenas dadas por los organismos asesores, por ICOMOS en este caso, queremos dar la responsabilidad del seguimiento al país que está proponiendo esta adopción. Vamos a acompañar las enmiendas, queremos ver esta inscripción completa, sin excepciones, porque el mensaje al mundo puede ser erróneo. Podemos estar diciendo esto queda excluido y es lo que no queremos. Queremos el mensaje, el ejemplo y que China siga trabajando para proteger nuestro patrimonio mundial. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan to be followed by Qatar.
Thank you, Chair. Japanese delegation would like to commend the State Party China for this important nomination. It is truly important site because it is enormously influential for Asia and the world. We also understand that conservation of this site in a complex modern city situations needs considerable efforts. We also thank ICOMOS for their thorough evaluation. It is basically the site of urban planning and urban ensemble, which clearly shows an ancient planning theory. But more importantly, if I may say, it is deeply connected to the knowledge system, cosmology, relationship between heaven and earth or grain. Its idea, as well as a way of design of capital, have been disseminated to all over the world, especially in Asia, including Japan. Therefore, we fully support the inscription of this site, Beijing Central Axis, a building ensemble exhibiting the ideal order of the Chinese capital. Also, carefully reading the nomination dossier and the ICOMOS evaluation report, allow me to say, Chair, we support the proposed amendment by the distinguished delegate of Greece and other members of the committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Qatar to be followed by Vietnam.
Thank you, Chair. I extend my gratitude to the Chinese delegation for their comprehensive nomination for the Beijing Central Axis. It is clear that this nomination is of great cultural and historical significance and showcase a legacy that spans from the Yuan dynasty through to modern-day China. Upon reviewing the arguments put forth by the Chinese delegation, I believe there is merit in reconsidering paragraph 4D of the additional recommendations in draft decisions 46, 8B 15. The inclusion of elements under criteria 3 and 4 is justified by the state party. They embody the continuation and adaptation of traditional urban planning principles through different historical epochs, reflecting both historical significance and architectural integrity. The integral role of the Tiananmen Square complex and the Yongdingman Gate in the historical and cultural fabric of the Beijing General Axis should be recognized and preserved without the implication that they detract from the site's outstanding universal value. In light of these considerations, I support the request to amend the draft decision submitted by Grace. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Vietnam, to be followed by Bulgaria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vietnam concurs with the views expressed by previous speakers. We think that the Tiananmen Square complex and the Yongdingmen Gate are integral elements of the Beijing Central Axis. And the Tiananmen Square complex bears witness to the historical continuum of national ceremonial traditions from the previous dynasties, and it's also a sacred palace connecting the feelings of the Chinese people since the national independence. And regarding the Yongdingmen Gate, it was rebuilt at the original site and using the original design techniques and materials in accordance with the NARA document of authenticity. And given the outstanding universal values of the Beijing Central Axis, as already reflected in the nomination file, we think we support the inscription of this valuable site, and we also support the Greeks amendment to delete the paragraph 4 in the draft decision. We thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bulgaria, to be followed by Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. We thank the advisory bodies and the nominating state party for the extensive and thorough reports they have prepared. We have taken good note of the OUV and rich cultural connotations carried by Beijing Central Axis. The traditional Chinese planning concepts carried by the property contribute significantly to the global history of urban planning and influence the planning of other capitals. Beijing Central Axis provides an exceptional material testimony to the philosophy of naturality and harmony. The axis includes historic structures built during the Yuan dynasty, the Ming dynasty, and improved during the Qing dynasty, as well as mid-20th century interventions in line with the traditional planning. The Tiananmen Square is an integral part of the Beijing Central Axis, and its role as a social and political center is also recognized in the ICOMOS assessment. With regard to the reconstruction of Yongdingmen Gate, we share the view that it has been carried out respecting the original materials and technologies as much as possible and based on thorough archaeological research. In light of this consideration, the State Party of Bulgaria has co-authored the amendment proposed by Greece. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ukraine, to be followed by Jamaica. Ukraine, you don't want to take the floor? Okay. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Jamaica, to be followed by the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Chair. Jamaica thanks ICOMOS for their presentation on this site, and we congratulate the State Party of China for the submission of the serial nomination, which through its component parts bear testimony to the evolution of the city, exhibiting evidence of the imperial dynastic system and urban planning traditions of China. In dialogue with the State Party, we have noted a concern in relation to the Tiananmen Square complex and the Yongdingmen Gate. It is our belief that all components of this nomination adequately reflect the OUV of this site and are part of the Central Axis in its entirety. Jamaica supports the statements made previously by other distinguished members of the committee, and we align ourselves with the amendments as proposed by Greece. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the detailed and informative comments made by the previous speakers, the Republic of Korea would like to support the amendment proposed by the distinguished delegation of Greece. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that the member states have spoken, we have seen that there are no questions which have been asked. I now invite you to adopt the draft decision 46Com 8B.15, but before doing so, I will ask the rapporteur if he has received any amendments on the draft decision proposed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tel qu'annoncé, nous avons bien reçu un amendement sur le projet de décision concernant l'inscription de l'axe central de Beijing-Chine. Amendement soumis par la Grèce, coécrit par l'Argentine, la Bulgarie, la Jamaïque, le Kazakhstan, le Kenya, le Liban, le Qatar, le Rwanda, la Zambie et la Belgique, et soutenu à l'instant en salle par le Sénégal, la Turquie, Argentine, Japon, Vietnam et République de Corée. Amendement qui vise au paragraphe 4 sur les recommandations à la suppression de la recommandation D. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Italy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Italy would like to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Please add Italy's name. Are there any further comments? Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We are so strong supporting the amendment that they put our name 2 times. It's fantastic, but when one is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one of him is enough. I completely agree with you on that. Are there any further amendments? I see none. Is there any objection for this entire draft decision to be adopted as a whole? I see none. I therefore declare draft decision 46Com 8B.15 adopted. Thank you very much. Let me congratulate China on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of the property. As I have done with other languages, given the diversity as a mark of respect to the Chinese language, I'll speak one line in Chinese or Mandarin. Wo juhu ni jutsu chunggong. China, you have the floor for an up to 4-minute statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for trying the Chinese language. Thank you so much. 感谢主席先生，中方诚挚感谢委员会充分认可北京中轴线的突出普遍价值，对项目列入世界遗产名录倍感骄傲。感谢教科文组织秘书处和国际古迹遗址理事会为项目列入所做的积极贡献。下面，我请中国联合国教科文组织全委会主任陈杰先生发言。
尊敬的主席先生，我代表中国教育部、中国联合国教科文组织全国委员会，感谢世界遗产委员会、联合国教科文组织、世界遗产中心专业咨询机构的杰出工作。北京中轴线项目是中华优秀传统文化和中华民族现代文明的载体。这一重要项目列入世界遗产名录，对于每一位中国人都具有特殊而重要的意义。北京中轴线项目既是中国的，也是世界的。中国愿意继续加强与联合国教科文组织在遗产保护等领域的合作， 共同推动文化繁荣发展、文化遗产保护、文明交流互鉴。下面我请中国文化遗产管理部门国家文物局局长李群先生和遗产项目所在地北京市人民政府副市长谭旭祥先生分别发言。谢谢。尊敬的主席先生，北京中轴线列入世界遗产名录，中国人民感到喜悦和振奋。我代表中国政府分管文化遗产的行政部门，向奥托内助理总干事、拉扎赫主任和世界遗产中心的各位同事表示由衷的感谢，向国际古迹理事会科学严谨的评估工作致以崇高的敬意，向各委员国的支持表示衷心的感谢。北京中轴线彰显了中国传统都城规划的理论和综合的哲学思想，对世界城市规划史产生了深远的影响。申遗成功是新的起点，中国政府将切实履行世界遗产公约，在遗产的保护、管理、展示以及社区参与和应对气候变化等方面持续发力，确保北京中轴线的突出普遍价值持续传承，为世界文化遗产事业继续提供中国经验，贡献中国智慧和力量。Thank you， 谢谢。
尊敬的主席，尊敬的各位委员，首先我谨代表北京市2186万市民向你们表示感谢，你们做出了一个伟大的决定。北京中轴线是中华文明连续性、创新性、统一性、包容性和和平性的最有力的见证。近年来，北京市坚持最好的标准，以中轴线申遗带动我们整个老城的保护，持续改善着人居环境，为广大市民和游客提供了更多的幸福感与获得感。我们将恪守世界遗产公约的精神，以今天为新的起点，更好地保护和传承好北京丰富的历史文化遗产。谢谢大家，欢迎大家来到北京。
Thank you. We'll give 2 minutes for delegates to congratulate and settle down.
Can I ask all the committee members to please come back to their seats so that we can proceed with the next nomination? Can I also remind everyone that there is a room outside where the celebration can take place, please? I invite all the committee members to take their seat, please.
Thank you. I now invite ECOMOS to present the nomination of the Phu Prabhat Historical Park, Thailand. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We received a factual error notification concerning the evaluation of the nomination of the Phu Prabhat Historical Park, and this is to be found on page 41 of both English and French version of document INF 8B4. Thank you.
ECOMOS, you have the floor.
This is the presentation of the ECOMOS evaluation of Phu Prabhat Historical Park, Thailand. The ECOMOS report can be found in document INF.8B1 on page 131 of the English version and page 132 of the French version. Next slide. The nominated property has two component parts: the Phu Prabhat Historic Park and the Sima Cultural Site at Wat Phra Phutabat Buaban. Common to both are stone boundary markers, which represent the Sima stone tradition of the Dvaravati period from the 7th to 11th centuries. Sima, a Buddhist term denoting a sacred area where Buddhist monks or nuns perform ceremonies, are found in various stylistic representations and layouts, representing the largest in situ collection of Sima stones globally. This nomination was first submitted in 2015 under the same name and resubmitted following an ECOMOS recommendation of deferral to allow the state party to deepen research of the Sima stone culture in relation to Buddhism. Next slide. The Phu Prabhat Historic Park is a small mountain in the Pa Khoea Nam National Reserve Forest at the northern part of the Korat Plateau in northeast Thailand. It contains 59 historic sites, which are either megalithic rock shelters surrounded by Sima stones or just the rock shelters. The Sima Cultural Site at Wat Phra Phutabat Buaban contains diverse Sima stones randomly positioned around a rock shelter, and another, organized as triple concentric circles facing 8 cardinal directions. Next slide. ECOMOS notes that Sima is the foundation of Buddhism. Phu Prabhat Historical Park is the best representative of the Sima stone tradition of the Dvaravati period in the world. While various materials were used in Theravada Buddhist monastic practice to mark sacred boundaries, extensive use of stone for marking sacred boundaries is found only in the Korat Plateau region in Southeast Asia. The megalithic rock shelters at Phu Prabhat were venerated by prehistoric populations 2 millennia ago, as evidenced by rock paintings on 47 shelters. Following the arrival of Buddhism in the 7th century, local religious beliefs evolved towards Buddhism, and rock shelters were transformed into venues for Buddhist ceremonial activities, some of which were surrounded by Sima stones. As the state party clarified in a later submission, a large collection of Sima stones from the Dvaravati period still exist in museums and collections. However, only Phu Prabhat has the largest concentration of Sima stones still in their original spatial layout and contexts. Next slide. ECOMOS considers that the comparative analysis justifies consideration of this property for the World Heritage List. Upon recommendation by ECOMOS, the state party provided a contextualized description of the Sima stone tradition in Southeast Asia and extended the comparative analysis outside Thailand. The comparative analysis demonstrates that the nominated property preserves the largest corpus of in situ Sima stones of the Dvaravati period, representing the most complete trajectory of their evolution and the diversity of their typology of form and artistic style. It's an outstanding example of land use that is representative of the Sima stone tradition that once prevailed in the Korat Plateau during the Dvaravati period. The nominated property testifies to this unique Buddhist tradition in Southeast Asia and the world, and therefore justifies consideration for the World Heritage List under criteria 3 and 5. Next slide. ECOMOS considers that the site exhibits a high degree of integrity and authenticity. the nominated property is of adequate size with all necessary attributes included and adverse impacts under control. The Sima stones displayed on the nominated property are preserved in their original locations with unchanged spatial arrangement patterns and untouched physical forms and decorative art, providing a truthful and credible source of information for understanding the Sima stone tradition of the Dvaravati period in terms of form and design, materials, function, location, traditions, and spirit and feeling. Since it was converted into a Buddhist religious center in the 7th century, the site has continued to be used as such. The nominated property boundaries and buffer zone are adequate to protect the attributes of outstanding universal value. Compared to the 2015 nomination, the buffer zone has been substantially reduced without a clear rationale. ICOMOS recommends a minor boundary modification request to expand the buffer zone and ensure effective protection of the wider setting. Next slide. Legal protection and management are adequate for the nominated property, and the state of conservation is good. ICOMOS, however, considers that heritage impact assessment mechanisms need to be incorporated into the management system. Although tourism management is adequate, ICOMOS considers that a carrying capacity should be established to guide site management, and measures should be adopted to prevent the spirit of the site from being disturbed by tourism. Next slide. Here's a summary of the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposed outstanding universal value of the nominated property. Next slide. To conclude, ICOMOS recommends that Puprabat Historical Park, Thailand, be inscribed in the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 3 and 5, and has included a number of further recommendations in the draft decision to support the long-term conservation of the property. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to know whether there are any comments concerning this nomination. I see no more comments or questions. I now invite you to adopt the draft decision 46 Com 8B.20. But before doing so, I would like to ask the rapporteur if he has received any amendments to the draft decision.
Nous n'avons pas reçu d'amendement concernant le projet de décision sur le parc historique de Phu Phrabat, Thaïlande, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Are there any comments? I see none. Is there any objection to the draft decision being adopted as a whole? I see no objections. I therefore declare draft decision 46 Com 8B.20 adopted. Thank you very much. Let me congratulate Thailand on behalf of the entire community for the inscription of this property. And as a mark of respect to the Thai culture, I'll attempt to speak one line in the great Thai language. Ko so deng kwam yinadi ti kun long tabian. Thank you. Thailand, you have the floor for up to a 4-minute statement. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, dear committee members, I wish to thank the committee and all those concerned for the decision today to inscribe Phu Phrabat on the World Heritage List. We are immensely proud of the recognition that has been accorded to Phu Phrabat for its outstanding universal value dating back to the Dvaravati culture in the 8th century and reflecting the early roots of Buddhism in Southeast Asia by way of the Sima stone tradition. Indeed, we have worked hard on this nomination It has been a team effort among many agencies concerned, and importantly, we appreciate the cooperation of ICOMOS in providing its expertise in order to ensure that the nomination meets the relevant criteria. We also recognize that the inscription entails responsibility to maintain, protect, and conserve this World Heritage Site for the present and future generations. I now have the honor of presenting a video message from His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Thailand, on this auspicious occasion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairperson, members of the World Heritage Committee, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Royal Thai government and the people of Thailand, I would like to express my gratitude to the committee members, the World Heritage Center, and the advisory bodies for recognizing the outstanding universal value of Phu Prabat, a testimony to the Sirima stone tradition of Tawarawadi period, which led to its inscription on the World Heritage List today. With Phu Prabat inscription, Thailand's World Heritage List now includes 5 cultural and 3 natural sites. It is important to note that Udon Thani, where this new site is located, is now the only province in Thailand that is home to 2 World Heritage Sites. The Phu Prabat site consists of Phu Prabat Historical Park and the Sima Cultural Sites. It represents the Sima stone tradition from the Tawarawadi period, dating back to around the 8th century, and preserves the largest corpus of Sima stones in the world. The inscription of the Phu Prabat on the World Heritage List today is not only significant to Thailand, but it will also benefit future generations. This will bring forth conservation, restoration, and protection efforts at all levels, as well as contributions to academic research in the interest of humankind. I look forward to welcoming all of you to Thailand to visit our new inscripted World Heritage Site. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite ICOMOS. We'll wait for some time, for 2 minutes for the celebrations to end, and then we'll start with the next item.
May I invite all the committee members to please take their seat so that we can proceed with the next nomination. Thank you. Can I also invite and remind everyone that there is a space for the celebration, please? Thank you.
I now invite ICOMOS to present the nomination of Testament of Kenozero Lake, the Russian Federation. But before that, I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We received a factual error notification concerning the evaluation of the nomination of the Testament of Kenozero Lake. And this is to be found on page 37 of both the English and French version of document in faith before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Il s'agit de la présentation de l'évaluation de l'ICOMOS du témoignage du lac Kenozero, Fédération de Russie. Le rapport de l'ICOMOS se trouve dans le document INF 8B1 à la page 196 de la version anglaise et à la page 185 de la version française. Pour cette évaluation, l'ICOMOS a reçu une lettre d'erreur factuelle et a accepté certaines de ces erreurs. Situé dans le parc national de Kenozero, au nord-ouest de la partie européenne de la Fédération Russie, le paysage culturel relique de Kenozero illustre le mode de vie paysan qui s'y développa à partir du XIIe siècle à la suite de la colonisation progressive de la région par les Slaves. Les limites du bien proposé pour inscription ont été tracées de manière à englober les 22 complexes paysagers identifiés situés dans les ensembles paysagers de Kenozero, Lokshmozero et Vilno-Porzenska. Les limites de la zone tampon coïncident avec celles du parc national. Le bien comprend un grand nombre d'établissements ruraux traditionnels à l'architecture vernaculaire en bois, situés dans les paysages pittoresques de lacs, rivières, de forêts et des champs. Ces paysages culturels reflètent la gestion communautaire de l'agriculture et de la nature qui se développa lorsque la culture forestière autochtone finno-ougrienne s'associa à la culture traditionnelle slave des champs, transformant et façonnant les paysages au fil des siècles. Les églises en bois, les enclos paroissiaux et les chapelles, dont bon nombre étaient à l'origine décorées des plafonds peints aux cieux, sont les principaux points de repères sociaux, culturels et visuels de la région. L'organisation spatiale de ce bâtiment, ainsi que les bosquets sacrés, les cimetières et les croix du bois qui jalonnent les paysages, soulignent le lien spirituel des habitants avec ces environnements. L'analyse comparative a été renforcée grâce aux informations complémentaires fournies par l'État partie en novembre 2023 et en février 2024. Elle confirme que le témoignage du lac Kenozero se distingue de la vaste série de biens comparables. Il est surtout exceptionnel pour son état de conservation et la diversité de son architecture historique en bois caractéristique du nord russe, y compris un grand nombre d'édifices domestiques et religieux traditionnels. Le bien proposé pour inscription répond aux critères 3, mais les critères 1, 5 et 6 n'ont pas été démontrés. Un nombre important de bâtiments traditionnels en bois ont été conservés dans leur situation et leur contexte authentique au sein du bien proposé pour inscription. Sur les 77 établissements qui existaient au début du XXe siècle, 62 ont été entièrement préservés avec plus de 1500 structures religieuses et domestiques traditionnelles en bois. Le bien est considéré comme authentique en ce qui concerne les éléments architecturaux en bois préservés, les schémas de peuplement et les contextes. La tradition et l'esprit du lieu complètent les principales sources d'information qui reflètent l'authenticité du bien proposé pour inscription. Les conditions d'intégrité et d'authenticité sont remplies malgré les évolutions qu'a connues les paysages traditionnels. Les limites du bien proposé pour inscription et de sa zone tampon sont appropriées. Cependant, la limite orientale de la zone tampon devrait être attendue au moyen d'une demande de modification mineure des limites afin d'apporter un niveau de protection supplémentaire au bien proposé pour inscription. Le témoignage du lac Kinozero est protégé par plusieurs dispositifs juridiques au niveau national et régional. La protection juridique est complète, tant du point de vue du secteur culturel que naturel. Un mécanisme de contrôle opérationnel et substantiel visant à préserver l'aspect traditionnel des établissements historiques est en place. Afin de renforcer la protection du bien, des zones de protection des monuments historiques et culturels devraient être établies pour tous les bâtiments classés et les limites de tous les bâtiments classés devraient être définies. Le plan de gestion du bien proposé pour inscription et des saisons tampons couvre la période 2021-2027 et est en cours de mise en œuvre. Le Parc national de Kinozero a élaboré des plans de gestion pour les 7 ensembles paysagers et des plans de gestion devraient être élaborés pour l'ensemble de ces complexes. L'ICOMOS note les efforts de l'État partie pour réglementer, gérer et conserver l'environnement historique du bien proposé pour inscription, en intégrant les objectifs de conservation de la nature à l'objectif de la protection de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle du bien. Voici un résumé de l'évaluation de l'ICOMOS de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle potentielle pour le bien proposé pour inscription. En conclusion, l'ICOMOS recommande que le témoignage de lac Kinozero Fédération de Russie soit inscrit en tant que paysage culturel relique sur la liste du patrimoine mondial sur la base du critère 3 et inclut un certain nombre de recommandations supplémentaires dans le projet de décision pour soutenir la conservation à long terme du bien. En ce qui concerne le changement du nom du bien, l'ICOMOS est d'accord avec la proposition de l'État partie, à savoir paysage culturel du lac Kinozero, Zapoviedanaye Kinozereye. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Thank you, ICOMOS, for your presentation. I would like to know whether there are any comments concerning this nomination. Ukraine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Dear colleagues, a draft law has been submitted to the State Duma to give regions the right to abolish specially protected natural areas and chart their boundaries. The draft law justifies the need to exclude from specially protected natural areas land plots and water bodies necessary for the implementation of national goals and strategic objectives, as well as significant projects in the field of socio-economic development and defense of the Russian Federation. The grounds for charging the boundaries of regional specially protected natural areas have been clarified. This can be done for the sake of, quote, realization of national goals and strategic objectives, end of quote, which the document specially includes the need of the armed forces and projects in the field of socio-economic development. It is also proposed to allow the charge of boundaries in cases where it is proposed to add more areas to the protected areas as compensation. Today, the territory of Kinozersky National Park is a, quote, specially protected natural area of federal significance, end of quote. This means that these areas are well protected from various interventions from a legal point of view. Given the existing risk, we consider it necessary to take measures to ensure that the planned changes to the legislation on specially protected areas do not have a negative impact on the protected status of the object of the draft law. To this end, we suggest that one clause be added requiring that proposed amendments to the legislation be submitted to the World Heritage Center for review by advisory bodies prior to their entry into force. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further requests for the floor from any committee member? Vietnam, you have the floor, followed by Rwanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The cultural landscape of Kenozero Lake represents an outstanding combination of traditional wooden architecture of the Russian North and the original peasant lifestyle with its crafts, folk stories, and religious beliefs. The authenticity and integrity of the proposed property are well maintained and visible as it is stated in ICOMOS evaluation. We'd like to underline the exceptional role of the Kenozero National Park, the main management authority in preservation of this unique territory, especially considering the fact that the protective status of the park is strengthened by the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve designation. And we would like to thank the State Party for the long-term efforts in improving the site management and protection, and we fully support the inscription of the cultural landscape of Kenozero Lake on the World Heritage List. I thank you.
Thank you. Rwanda, I think you have cancelled your request, so I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Zambia to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The State Party of Zambia wishes to commend the Russian Federation for the work put in to ensure that the testament of Kenozero is well conserved, even as we agree and support the recommendation made by ICOMOS that the site meets the requirements to be inscribed on the World Heritage List under Criteria 3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rwanda. You have put your plate up now. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Rwanda did not request the floor before, but we will happy to take the floor now. Would like to thank l'organe d'évaluation and just to add our name and support the recommendation by the evaluation body. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member state would like to take the floor? I see no further requests. No further questions. There have been no questions posed to the advisory body. Therefore, I now invite you to adopt the draft decision 46 8b.20. But before doing so, I would like to ask the rapporteur if he has received any amendments on the draft decision proposed.
Monsieur le Président, dans le projet de décision initiale figuraient des erreurs factuelles qui ont été reconnues et intégrées dans le texte. Néanmoins, je souhaiterais, si vous le permettez, que nous puissions revenir à l'amendement suggéré en salle par la délégation de l'Ukraine en demandant à la délégation ukrainienne de parler à une vitesse suffisamment lente pour que nous puissions l'écrire mot pour mot dans une version telle que suggérée par l'Ukraine. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Ukraine, you have heard the rapporteur. Please dictate it slowly, your amendment. We wish it was presented before, but you did not do so, so please dictate it now.
So we suggest an additional recommendation to para 4, which reads as follows. Ensuring that the planned legislative amendments on the specially protected areas do not have a negative impact on the protective status of the property, and submitting them to the World Heritage Center for review by the advisory bodies before they are in force. Thank you.
So it reads, ensuring that the planned legislative amendments, planned, which means as of now they are not operational. It's a hypothetical situation. We are dealing with the report of the advisory body, and the decisions are based on the dossier which has been presented and studied. So this is based on something that is in the past. If we are going to predict the future and incorporate that, then it's a bridge that has yet not reached. And if at all there is any hypothetical negative impact on a hypothetical futuristic event, then you always have the state of conservation reports, you have the subsequent committee meetings to bring these protections and safeguards. But you have suggested your amendment, so I'm just reading it out. Do not have a negative impact on the protective status of the property and submitting them to the World Heritage Center for review by the advisory bodies before they are in force. Okay, this is the amendment presented by the State Party of Ukraine. Would any other member state like to take the floor? You may raise your plate, but if you raise your plate, do not put it down, please, because it confuses us. You want to take the floor, or have you withdrawn your request? I see the state of Qatar to be followed by Lebanon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je pense qu'il y a un consensus vraiment sur l'inscription de ce bien et bien sûr salue le rapport de ICOMOS que je remercie beaucoup. Moi je voudrais savoir et comprendre vraiment la raison par laquelle on ajoute cette paragraphe, sachant que j'aurais des commentaires sur le texte, on est sur le mandat de la Convention de patrimoine mondial et le Operational Guidelines. Et là, si on ça pourrait donner de confusion, je pense. Je parle de la langue technique, de texte, qu'on adopte cette paragraphe pour des textes à venir, notamment des textes juridiques ou législatifs dans un pays membre. Ouais. Donc, je pense même dans le sens juridique, il n'y a pas d'application des textes de manière rétroactive, ni dans l'avenir qui ne sont pas encore mettre en vigueur. Et je pense que, bon, c'est vraiment un conseil de garder le texte dans l'esprit de mandat de notre règle de comité. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et nous gardons toujours l'esprit de consensus.
Thank you, Qatar. Ukraine, you have heard the request for clarification and the justification, but I will give the floor to other member states who have raised the plate before I come back to you. The distinguished representative of Lebanon, you have the floor, followed by Rwanda.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, merci. Je suppose que vous nous demandez d'intervenir sur le point I proposé par l'Ukraine. Donc, bon, oui, évidemment, tout le monde peut être d'accord, on peut tous être d'accord que pour n'importe quel bien, les amendements législatifs qui peuvent venir à l'avenir concernant des zones protégées ou des zones, etc., doivent être présentés au Centre du patrimoine mondial, doivent être présentés aux organisations consultatives. Je veux dire, ça s'applique sur tous les biens, ça s'applique partout. Je ne comprends pas le besoin de venir ici, particulièrement sur ce bien-là, l'inscrire. Il faudrait à ce moment-là le mettre partout. Or, c'est dans les orientations, c'est dans les principes de notre convention. Je ne vois vraiment pas pourquoi ici venir mettre le doigt dessus. Je pense que ce n'est absolument pas nécessaire. Merci.
Thank you for those wise comments. You have explained very nicely, and that's why I respect your views. as I respect everyone else's views as well, Rwanda, you have your floor.
Thank you, Chair. Rwanda will suggest that we stick to the regional recommendation by the advisory body, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Please capture Rwanda's request. Okay. Ukraine, you have heard what our distinguished colleagues from various state parties have asked and how they have given the explanation. It appears to me that number one is the futuristic aspect of it, and number two is the inherent intention in the convention itself that already captures what what your feeling is about a property. And there are mechanisms, once a property is inscribed on the World Heritage List, the World Heritage Center does not let go of it. There are supervision, there is scrutiny, and if at all there is any violation, it's always brought in. So there is a request by Rwanda to, if it's possible for you to withdraw this particular amendment so that based on the consensus that we had, we can move ahead. Ukraine, I'll give you the floor to respond. You have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Okay, for the sake of consensus, it can be deleted, but we request that this point should be included into the report.
So noted. Thank you. I request the Secretariat to please note that point in the report. Okay. Now that Ukraine has withdrawn its amendment, can we adopt this whole this whole decision as a whole? As it appears on the screen. Are there any comments? I see none. I therefore declare draft decision 46com 8b.20 adopted. There is some error. The draft decision is 46com 8b.26 adopted. Let me congratulate the Russian Federation on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property, and permit me to speak a line in the Russian language. Pozdravляю вас с регистрацией. Thank you. Russian Federation, you have the floor for an up to 4-minute statement.
Спасибо, уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые члены Комитета всемирного наследия, уважаемые коллеги, дорогие друзья. От лица Российской Федерации хотел бы выразить благодарность за мировое признание уникальной ценности культурного ландшафта Кинозерия. Эта заповедная территория хранит не только архитектурные шедевры русских зодчих, но и живые духовные и культурные традиции. Особенно приятно, что это знаменательное событие состоялось в гостеприимной Индии, стране с древнейшей историей и богатейшей культурой. Включение Кинозерия в список всемирного наследия – это дань памяти нашим предкам, которые с удивительным чувством меры и красоты создали в суровых северных краях деревни, церкви, часовни с прекрасными потолочными росписями небесами. Это дань уважения исследователям, ученым, реставраторам, которые столетиями изучали и бережно сохраняли культурное наследие Кинозерия. Наконец, это огромная и долгожданная радость для местных жителей, наследников и продолжателей культурных традиций Кинозерия. Представьте себе, прямо сейчас, за тысячи и тысячи километров отсюда, в маленьких деревушках, среди бескрайних лесов и озер русского севера, жители Кинозерия с замиранием сердца ждали этой счастливой новости и разделяет сейчас нашу радость. Сформировавшийся на русском севере феномен русского деревянного зодчества – это свидетельство высокого уровня народной культуры и одновременно весомый вклад России во всемирное наследие человечества. Особенность Кинозерского национального парка, в границах которого расположена Кинозерия – обеспечение сохранности и полноценного развития всех видов наследия – природного и культурного, материального и нематериального. Мы благодарим Кинозерский национальный парк, благодарим Российский институт наследия за разработку номинации. Это был трудный, многолетний процесс. Это был путь, в ходе которого было сделано очень многое, проведены масштабные исследования, созданы музейные объекты, обеспечено сохранение и устойчивое развитие заповедной территории. Поддержка местных жителей, бережно и с большой любовью хранящих свое наследие, тоже внесла неоценимый вклад в номинационный процесс на всех его этапах. Выражаем отдельную признательность ИКОМОС за тщательное рассмотрение досье, а также рекомендации по повышению эффективности работы с объектом, представленные в решении. Российская сторона в полной мере осознает важность сбережения уникального культурного ландшафта для будущих поколений и приложит все усилия для выполнения этой почетной миссии на самом высоком уровне. Приглашаю членов комитета, делегации стран-членов ЮНЕСКО посетить этот выдающийся объект. Но если вы приедете зимой, не забудьте одеться потеплее и обязательно захватите шубы и теплые шапки. Спасибо.
Thank you. Can I ask the Russian Federation to repeat the last statement, please? My translation was not very good.
За то, что нас поддержали.
Хотел бы еще раз спасибо и пригласить их на этот объект. Обязательно приезжайте и почувствуйте гостеприимство русского холодного севера, но теплое гостеприимство. Спасибо.
Thank you.
Let's give them some time.
I'll just give some time for the congratulations before we move on to the next agenda item.
Can I please invite all the committee members to take their seats so that we can proceed with the next nomination, and also remind everyone that there is an available space outside for the celebration. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite ICOMOS to present a nomination of the historic town and archaeological site of Gedi, Kenya. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is the presentation of the ICOMOS evaluation of the historic town and archaeological site of Gedi in Kenya. The ICOMOS report can be found in document INF 8B1 on page 26 of the English version and page 42 of the French version. Gedi was one of the most important Swahili cities on the East African coast in the period from the 10th to 17th centuries. During this period, it was part of a complex network of trade and cultural exchanges that crossed the Indian Ocean. Abandoned in the 17th century, Gedi demonstrates the characteristics of Swahili architecture, building materials, and town planning. Gedi was an opulent settlement and is clearly delineated by its inner and outer walls. There are remains of domestic and civic architecture, mosques, tombs, and a sophisticated water management system. Luxury goods imported from China, Persia, India, and Venice are found at Gedi and demonstrate its role in international networks. The nominated property and buffer zone align with the designation of Gedi as a national monument. The boundaries are based on the location of the outer wall of the former city and fully contains it. The forested buffer zone provides additional protection and visual setting for the nominated property. Gedi demonstrates the characteristics of a Swahili Islamic settlement with a clear street layout within its inner wall and an intact outer wall, which demonstrates differences according to social stratification. The site demonstrates the exchanges through the Indian Ocean trade networks that supported the prosperity of its inhabitants. Some elements within Gedi demonstrate a fusion between African and Islamic cultural traditions and beliefs. The comparative analysis was augmented during the evaluation process by the state party through exchanges with ICOMOS and has included consideration of many other Swahili coastal settlements, including some already inscribed in the World Heritage List and tentative lists. While Gedi exhibits many similarities with other Swahili coastal settlements in terms of architectural types and building materials, its abandonment in the 17th century and lack of later periods of occupation have contributed to a high degree of completeness and state of conservation. ICOMOS considers that Gedi adds significant depth to the understanding of Swahili coastal settlements and the associated trade networks over a long period. The abundance of archaeological evidence, readable spatial layout, and remains of significant structures are notable. The nominated property demonstrates criteria 2, 3, and 4. The requirements for authenticity and integrity have been met. The inner and outer walls of the settlement are intact and contain all the elements of the historic town, including its water management infrastructure. The physical fabric of the site is in a stable state of conservation, although some recommendations have been made to reduce the impacts of visitors and vegetation growth. Gedi has been subject to legal protection from 1927, and the property and buffer zone are owned and managed by National Museums of Kenya. The site is fully protected by national laws and local planning processes, and the buffer zone forests are protected and managed by the Kenyan Forest Service. The most significant pressures potentially affecting the property are vegetation management and fire risk. There is a management plan in place, and the State Party is committed to advancing the staffing, capacity building, and conservation needs of the property. ICOMOS considers that the community engagement and benefit sharing is a strength of this nomination. Here is a summary of the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposed outstanding universal value of the nominated property. To conclude, ICOMOS recommends that the historic town and archaeological site of Gedi in Kenya be inscribed in the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 2, 3, and 4, and has included a number of further recommendations in the draft decision to support the long-term conservation of the property. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, ICOMOS. I would now like to know whether there are any comments concerning this nomination. Rwanda, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Rwanda remercie le Kenya pour avoir élaboré minutieusement ce dossier pour lequel le comité prendra une décision d'inscription, nous le pensons bien et de l'espérons. Nous remercions les organes consultatifs pour les recommandations émises, de même que le projet de décision sage et réfléchi du comité d'inscrire la ville historique du site archéologique de Gedi sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Monsieur le Président, Gedi était un établissement opulent avec des bâtiments publics et privés, des rues, des tombes, un ensemble palatial élaboré et une grande mosquée. Dans l'enceinte intérieure, des vestiges de l'architecture domestique, civile et religieuse, tous construits en roches coralliennes locales et mortiers de chaux, sont disposés selon un plan de rue quadrillé, les mosquées et les tombes étant embellies par des sculptures et incrustées de porcelaine chinoise. La ville historique et site archéologique de Gedi est si important non seulement pour le Kenya, mais aussi pour la sous-région et l'humanité tout entière, vu sa valeur universelle exceptionnelle pour laquelle elle est proposée pour inscription. Le Rwanda soutient l'inscription de la ville historique et site archéologique de Gedi sur la liste du patrimoine mondial sous les critères 2, 3 et 4. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Zambia, followed by Belgium.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Zambia is happy to contribute to the comments that have been already contributed by the state part of Rwanda. When you look at the report from ICOMOS, it is really impressive in the sense that it is clear that the state party of Kenya did its homework in trying to come up with this dossier, because it is one of those files which is coming to us as one of the cleanest files. I think this is something which is very commendable for the state part of Kenya, and at the same time this is also a good example to the rest of us on the continent of Africa. I think this is also showing that the quality of dossiers are improving, and would also want to take advantage of this this opportunity to specifically appreciate the role that the African World Heritage Fund, which is Category 2 center on the continent of Africa, that it is doing for the state parties of Africa, because they have also had a lot of input in the quality of ensuring that we have a quality dossier for this state party. I submit, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Belgium, followed by Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous savons que les anciennes villes côtières swahili de plusieurs États partis d'Afrique de l'Est sont reconnues depuis de nombreuses années sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Porter à l'inscription un nouveau bien de ce type nécessitait d'illustrer la singularité du site de Gedi comme un témoignage complémentaire renforçant la compréhension des sites déjà inscrits et partageant des similitudes en termes d'époque historique, de forme architecturale, de situation géographique ou encore de matériaux de construction. L'organisation consultative a confirmé la qualité du site de Gedi comme bien permettant d'approfondir la connaissance des établissements côtiers swahili et leurs réseaux commerciaux entre cette région du monde et l'océan Indien. Nous saluons le travail réalisé par l'État partie et l'encourageons à le poursuivre, notamment dans les plans de gestion et stratégies de recherche, afin de conserver et protéger au mieux ces vestiges architecturaux et archéologiques d'une grande richesse. La Belgique apporte son plein soutien à ce dossier, qui représente aussi un signe d'espoir en faveur de la liste du patrimoine mondial plus crédible, plus représentative de la diversité et de la richesse des cultures du monde. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I give the floor to Senegal, followed by Vietnam.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal associe sa voix à celle que nous avons déjà entendue. Guédi est dans un continuum où on peut trouver l'amour, Mombasa et toute cette culture swahili. Elle a été abandonnée au XVIe siècle alors que Mombasa continue à vivre. Et les problèmes de conservation sur ces deux sites sont totalement différents, bien entendu. Mais il y a un fond culturel commun, c'est-à-dire que toutes ces villes ont participé à une culture mondiale. Toutes ces villes ont été connectées avec l'Orient et même avec la Chine. Et donc c'est important pour l'histoire de l'Afrique de savoir que l'urbanisme n'est pas né avec la colonisation. L'urbanisme a été aussi inventé quelque part en Afrique. Et c'est des éléments qu'il faut potentialiser, qu'il faut enseigner et qu'il faut mettre en valeur pour l'humanité. Il est important peut-être d'enseigner les caractéristiques architecturales et surtout les réseaux hydrauliques complexes qui ont été développés dès le XIIe siècle, non le Xe siècle même, dans cette ville. Donc c'est important pour l'humanité de capitaliser sur tout cela et c'est un enseignement pour l'histoire. Et on félicite bien sûr l'État parti d'avoir fait un remarquable dossier. On félicite les organisations consultatives, les COMOS, d'avoir aidé à mettre en valeur tout ce potentiel. Merci.
Thank you. Vietnam, followed by Argentina.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm very brief. We'd like to commend the State Party for all the efforts to present this valuable property, and the authenticity and integrity of the property are well maintained and visible, as it is stated by the ICOMOS evaluation. And in this regard, we fully support the inscription of the historic town and archaeological site of JD of Kenya on the World Heritage List. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I give the floor to Argentina, followed by India.
Gracias, señor presidente. Es muy fácil intervenir después de haber escuchado las intervenciones de nuestros colegas en esta sala. Nos queremos sumar a todas las declaraciones hechas, comenzando por Ruanda, que tan clara fue. Agradecemos a ICOMOS por el impecable trabajo realizado y agradecemos también al África por compartir estos hitos tan importantes de la cultura que ahora van a ser de todos nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I now give the floor to India, followed by Qatar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving India the floor. India congratulates Kenya for submitting the nomination dossier of the historic town and archaeological site of Gedi on the World Heritage List. This honor will highlight the site's significance in the history of the Indian Ocean. As the exhaustive research presented in the nomination dossier and the justification of Criterion 2 rightly points out, the historic town and archaeological site of Gedi stands as a testament to the vibrant trade settlement networks that once thrived across the Indian Ocean. These networks connected the East African coast, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Indian subcontinent through seasonal monsoon winds that carried dhows filled with goods, ideas, and cultures. The Swahili towns, including Gedi, were not only the trade centers of trade, but also hubs for cultural exchange, influenced by interactions with traders from India. The influence of Indian Ocean trade is evident in Getty's socio-religious structures and residential settings, showcasing a blend of styles and techniques from various cultures, including that of India. Today, as we celebrate the Getty's inscription, we recognize the shared heritage that binds our nations. This also correlates closely with the initiative of Project Mawsum that promotes this concept of shared heritage across the region. Congratulations to Kenya for this remarkable achievement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, India. I give the floor to Qatar, to be followed by St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous voudrions remercier tout d'abord les organes consultatifs et Kenya pour la coopération très constructive et que je salue profondément. Le Qatar porte son plein soutien pour la nomination de villes historiques et archéologiques de Getty que mérite bien d'être dans la liste et sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I now give the floor to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines congratulates the State Party of Kenya on the work done on this dossier. We say thanks to the advisory bodies as well for their work. We support all the previous comments made by various representatives and the inscription of the historic town and archaeological site of Getty as a World Heritage Site. Thank you.
Thank you. As there are no further comments or questions posed, we'll go to the draft decision. I now invite you to adopt the draft decision 46Com 8B.10, but before doing so, I would like to ask the rapporteur if he has received any amendments on the draft decision proposed.
Nous n'avons pas reçu d'amendement concernant le projet d'inscription de la ville historique et site archéologique de Getty, Kenya, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Are there any comments? I see none. Is there any objection to this draft decision being adopted as a whole? I see none. I therefore declare draft decision 46Com 8B.10 adopted. Thank you very much. Let me congratulate Kenya on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Let me say online in Kiswahili, Hongera Kenya. Kenya, you have the floor for an up to 4-minute statement. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, the World Heritage Committee, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you for giving the State Party of Kenya the opportunity to bestow to the world the historic town and the archaeological site of Getty, one of the most prominent Swahili city-states on the East African coast. The property is an outstanding testimony to the social and economic structure of the inhabitants of Getty around the 13th century AD. The property presents outstanding elements of construction techniques that blended the use of coral rag, coral mortar, and earth mortar. The property also presents intricate water engineering techniques evident in the proliferation of wells, storage facilities, and its distribution and drainage that is rare in a town of its time. Mr. Chair, the inscription of this property on the World Heritage List makes it the 8th World Heritage property in Kenya. Kenya is blessed with diverse natural and cultural heritage treasures. The inscription of Getty is a testimony to the fact that Kenya offers not only wildlife tourism products, but to the world, but also interesting cultural heritage worth sampling. We express our immense gratitude to the government of the Sultanate of Oman for the financial support that was instrumental in facilitating the nomination. We appreciate the World Heritage Center for their support under the framework of the Operational Strategy for Priority Africa 2022 to 2029. We thank the African World Heritage Fund for the financial and technical support during the processing of the nomination. We express our deepest gratitude to the county government of Kilifi and the people of Kilifi for the support and collaboration during the nomination process. Finally, we invite you to Kenya to enjoy the country's rich heritage. Welcome to the cradle of humankind. I'll now pass the floor to the Kenyan High Commissioner to India, Ambassador Peter Munyiri.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I convey my heartiest congratulations to the people and the Republic of the Republic of Kenya for the inscription of the historical Gedi archaeological site. We celebrate the technologies that were deployed in the 13th century and their positive impact on lives. We learn great lessons from them. We commit to conserving and managing this great resource for posterity. I wish to thank the World Heritage Center at UNESCO, the African World Heritage Fund, the National Museums of Kenya, the Community of Nations, and the Permanent Delegation of Kenya at UNESCO for supporting the development of the nomination dossier. We look forward to more successful nominations as we strive to conserve and preserve our national heritage. Finally, Excellencies and Chairman, we welcome you to experience this great site as well as our other heritages in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll wait for some time before we go to the next item.
May I invite the committee members to take their seat, please, so that we can start the examination of the next nomination. I also want to remind everyone that there is an available space outside for the celebration. Thank you. I invite all committee members to take their seat, please. Thank you.
now invite ECOMOS to present the nomination of Human Rights, Liberation and Reconciliation, Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites, South Africa. ECOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is the presentation of the ECOMOS evaluation of Human Rights, Liberation and Reconciliation, Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites, South Africa. The ECOMOS report can be found in document INF AP1 on page 294 of the English version and page 323 of the French version. The legacy of the South African liberation struggle for human rights, liberation and reconciliation is represented by the serial nomination of 14 component parts. These sites reflect key symbolic events in the long struggle against the apartheid state that had fostered oppression and racial discrimination. The influence of Nelson Mandela in promoting reconciliation, understanding and forgiveness, and belief systems based on philosophies of non-racialism, Pan-Africanism and Ubuntu, a concept that implies humanity is not solely embedded in an individual. This nomination was submitted in 2022 and was subject to the moratorium that was established by the World Heritage Committee regarding sites associated with the memory of recent conflict. This is a serial proposal of 14 component parts located in different parts of South Africa. Some of these sites are locations where key events occurred in the 20th century liberation struggle. Some are memorials and others represent symbolic aspects of the liberation and reconciliation processes that span the 20th century, including the history of the African National Congress. The justification for inscription of this property is based on the ability of the selected sites to represent the legacy of the South African liberation struggle in the 20th century that resulted in the end of the apartheid system and the emergence of the post-colonial nation, which celebrates its 30th anniversary this year. The State Party has structured the nomination according to 3 interrelated tenets or thematic strands. These are the loss or denial of human rights, liberation, and reconciliation. The nomination celebrates the contribution of the South African struggle within a global context. It also recognizes the selected sites as representing the legacy of Nelson Mandela, a clearly globally respected leader of the liberation and of the reconciliation processes that formed the new nation. The comparative analysis was augmented by the State Party during the evaluation process through dialogue with ECOMOS. It considers a wide range of World Heritage and tentative list sites throughout the world. The most relevant are those in Africa, along with the 20th century liberation struggles in the United States and India. The State Party has also provided information about many sites in South Africa that relate to the selected themes of this nomination. ECOMOS considers that the South African struggle against apartheid is characterized by its underpinning ideals that became widely recognized through the leadership and influence of Nelson Mandela. Criterion 6 is potentially justified for the serial proposal, although ECOMOS considers that the comparative analysis did not justify inclusion of all 14 of the nominated component parts. The key issue for the authenticity and integrity of this nomination has been the rationale for the selection of the component parts. In essence, ECOMOS considers that 8 of the component parts contribute to the proposed outstanding universal value, and that a further 3 component parts have the potential to do so, but currently have issues impacting on their integrity and authenticity. There are 3 component parts where ECOMOS considers that the links with the key themes of the nomination are too generic to justify their inclusion. They are Olanga, Fort Hare University, and the Z.K. Matthews House. For most component parts, ECOMOS considers that the boundaries and buffer zones are adequate. However, it is strongly recommended that buffer zones be provided for 2 components, most especially for the site labelled 16th June 1976, the streets of Orlando West, and also the Sharpeville Police Station. ICOMOS considers that the legal protection of the nominated property is adequate, although further work is needed to ensure that the effective legal protection for buffer zones is in place for all components. There is an integrated conservation management plan and individual management plans for each component part. Some issues require further attention, including conservation planning, resourcing for conservation, and the local level capacities for management. While some of the nominated component parts have good interpretation and visitor management, others are lacking these elements at present. The State Party has done a commendable job of engaging with associated communities and stakeholders. Because of the nature of these sites, sustaining this strong engagement will be essential to their future protection and presentation. Here is a summary of the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposed outstanding universal value of the nominated property. ICOMOS considers that Criterion 6 has the potential to be demonstrated for 11 of the nominated component parts, once issues impacting on the integrity and authenticity of 3 of them are addressed. As noted before, ICOMOS recommends that buffer zones should be provided for 2 of the component parts, particularly the 16th June 1976, the streets of Orlando West, and that conservation work is needed at 3 component parts. In relation to protection, this is generally adequate, although the mechanisms for protection of buffer zones need further attention, as already mentioned. The management of the nominated zero property is satisfactory, adequate, although some recommendations have been provided to help with the further work that the State Party will be undertaking, particularly for interpretation. To conclude, ICOMOS recommends that human rights, liberation and reconciliation, Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites, South Africa, be referred back to the State Party for the following reasons. As I've already mentioned, to reduce the serial nomination to include 11 of the nominated component parts, to undertake necessary repairs and conservation to 3 of them, namely the Walter Sisulu Square, the Sharpeville Police Station, and the Great Place at Makwazeni. To provide a buffer zone to the 2 components as I've already described, and to ensure adequate protection of all the buffer zones. ICOMOS has included a number of further recommendations in the draft decision to aid the long-term conservation of the property. These are outlined in full in the evaluation report and on this and the following slide. Thank you.
Thank you, ICOMOS, for your presentation. I would like to know whether there are any comments concerning this nomination. Lebanon, followed by Zambia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ce bien a été nominé en adéquation avec la décision 18 ex-com 4 du Comité du patrimoine mondial concernant les sites associés à la mémoire de conflits récents. Nous avons 3 questions que nous souhaiterons poser à l'ICOMOS. La première question concerne leur questionnement, disons, concernant le nom du bien, concernant le nom de Nelson Mandela. Le nom de Nelson Mandela est directement lié à la mémoire de ce que ce site veut dire, à la signification de ce bien. Nelson Mandela, c'est la légende, non seulement pour les peuples d'Afrique du Sud, non seulement pour les peuples d'Afrique, mais pour l'ensemble de l'humanité. Nous avons, si nous regardons un peu la liste, nous avons énormément de noms de personnes associées à des biens inscrits sur la liste. Luther, Le Corbusier, Auguste Perret, Victor Horta, Roberto Burle Marx, Luis Barragan. C'est-à-dire qu'il est possible d'insérer dans la liste des noms de personnages. Et dans le cas de Nelson Mandela, nous pensons que c'est tout à fait approprié. Ça, c'est notre premier point. Le deuxième point que je voudrais poser à l'ICOMOS, et ça à nous tous, c'est dans quelle mesure les notions traditionnelles d'authenticité et d'intégrité peuvent être appliquées à ce type de biens. Ne faudrait-il pas imaginer de pouvoir lancer une réflexion sur comment interpréter les notions d'authenticité et d'intégrité par rapport à des biens associés à la mémoire de conflits récents? Nous pensons que c'est très difficile de pouvoir appliquer de façon, disons, traditionnelle ces notions-là telles qu'on l'a fait sur d'autres types de biens dans la Convention. Notre troisième question est une question de détail. Il est dit dans les annexes ensuring that the proposed hotel development in Lily's Leaf is located outside the nominated component part. Est-ce que cela signifie qu'il n'existe pas de plan précis qui indique la localisation de cet hôtel, qu'il n'existe pas de plan des component parts? C'est une question. Merci.
Thank you. Since a large number of member states have raised their plates, committee members, and we are about 18 minutes from 1 p.m., not all may be accommodated in this morning session, so we will be continuing them in the afternoon session. But before that, I will request the director to read the names of the member states so that they can at least lower their plates. Mr. Lazar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. The following committee members have requested to take the floor, and I will read in the order of intervention. Zambia, Mexico, Jamaica, Greece, India, Rwanda, Belgium, Republic of Korea, Italy, Qatar, Japan, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, Kenya, Argentina, Senegal, and Vietnam. And now I see Kazakhstan. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Zambia, followed by Mexico.
Honorable Chairperson, distinguished members of the World Heritage Committee, I'm honored to speak on behalf of Zambia, representing the State Party of South Africa. I would like to thank ICOMOS for their wonderful work. Today, I present our case for the inscription of Human Rights, Liberation and Reconciliation, Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites. With all 14 components as initially proposed, as regards the outstanding universal value and integrity, each component, including the ZK Matthews House, Fort Hare, and Olange, is crucial to the roles, crucial to the site's outstanding universal value, reflecting human rights, liberation, and reconciliation. South Africa has committed resources to ensure their integrity and authenticity. On operational guidelines, paragraphs 24, 78, and 96, these emphasize the importance of integrity, authenticity, and conservation for inscription. Relating to the legacy and policy framework on buffering mechanism, South Africa's comprehensive buffering mechanism policy effectively protects sites like the Shepville Massacre Site and Orlando West. This aligns with paragraphs 103, 107, and 104, which emphasize buffer zones and alternative protection methods, and also 1972 UNESCO Convention, Article 5, that advocates integrating heritage protection into planning programs, meaning the State Party of South Africa has complied with these paragraphs in the operational guidelines and in the convention. We also note that the State Party's commitment to stakeholder engagement, Mr. Chairman. South Africa's strategy integrated within the management plan and legislated through the World Heritage Convention Act ensures effective engagement aligning with operational guidelines of paragraph 40. In short, the State Party of South Africa has gone further as compared to most state parties by having a World Heritage Convention Act, which guarantees protection of their heritage sites, the World Heritage Sites. In terms of adequacy of resource allocation and legal protection, South Africa has committed financial and technical resources for the site management and conservation, fulfilling the obligations under 1972 Convention, Article 4 and 5. In terms of case studies, in case we may say that we are speaking from without, we have case studies which include Historic Center of Rome, Old City of Jerusalem, and the Machu Picchu. All these demonstrate effective use of regulatory mechanism and buffering mechanism. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, South Africa is committed to preserving human rights, liberation and reconciliation, Nelson Mandela legacy sites, reflecting the state party's legacy in human rights, peace, cultural dialogue, as well as its dedication to cultural heritage, Mr. Chairman. As I conclude, Mr. Chairman, the state party of Zambia would like to ask questions to both the State Party of South Africa and ICOMOS. To South Africa, we wish to find out whether or not a consensus has been reached with ICOMOS on the different issues raised by the advisory body. And for you, ICOMOS, we would like to find out, are there any specific paragraphs of the operational guidelines which the State Party of South Africa may not have complied with in crafting their nomination dossier? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Que sera, sera. What will be, shall be.
I give the floor to Mexico, to be followed by Jamaica.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Señor presidente, esta nominación sobre los derechos humanos, lucha por liberación y reconciliación, sitios de patrimonio Nelson Mandela que ha presentado el Estado de Sudáfrica, se trata de una candidatura de un sitio de memoria que ayudará a la comunidad sudafricana a fortalecer la comprensión de los eventos que tuvieron lugar en ese país durante el apartheid. El proceso de reconocimiento, liderado por las autoridades públicas, tiene definitivamente una visión patrimonial y política, dado que se contempla la inscripción de lugares de resistencia ante la discriminación racial y la violación de derechos humanos, con el fin de promover la reconciliación, la justicia y la cultura universal de los derechos humanos. México considera que los argumentos del Estado parte en cuanto a las zonas de protección están bien fundamentados y cumplen con los objetivos principales de la Convención de Patrimonio Mundial en cuanto a garantizar, mediante ordenamientos jurídicos nacionales, las medidas de conservación vinculadas a los aspectos de la memoria. Es primordial comprender la importancia y los valores asociativos de los lugares de memoria reciente como este. No debemos olvidar la importancia del patrimonio mundial como un derecho cultural y su papel en la formación y consolidación de identidades. Finalmente, consideramos que este sitio debería ser concebido como un sitio de conciencia, puesto que involucra tanto la defensa y reconciliación con los derechos humanos como la conservación del patrimonio a fin de consolidar la paz. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Jamaica, followed by Greece.
Thank you, Chair. Jamaica thanks the State Party of South Africa for the submission of this significant serial nomination. We are heartened by this nomination and the extensiveness of its components. The 14 component and subcomponent parts of this nomination adequately demonstrate the events and ideas that were at the core of the liberation struggle in South Africa, and how liberation, forgiveness, and reconciliation has effectively taken place and continue even to today. We appreciate the evaluation of the advisory body for this site of recent conflict, which confirms the site's OUV, authenticity, and integrity. In relation to the concerns raised regarding the buffer zones repairs to components and removal of component parts, the State Party has adequately addressed these concerns by effecting the repair of the Sharpeville Police Station, funding support for the repair of the 2 other sites, and providing information on the significance of the University of Fort Hare, ZK Matthews, and Olange. We are satisfied with these explanations and the commitment of the State Party of South Africa to the serial nomination. We would also want to support the inscription of this nominated property. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Greece, followed by India.
Thank you, Chairperson. Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites is an inspiring nomination. It draws on the universal themes of human rights, liberation, and reconciliation. Human rights have emerged worldwide as one of the most powerful values of the 20th and 21st centuries. This universal recognition, however, was challenged by the excesses of colonialism in Africa, and in particular in South Africa with apartheid, which ranked as one of the most oppressive and racist in the world. The serial nomination of the 14 component parts demonstrates the ideas, beliefs, and events that were at the core of the liberation struggle in this country, which is linked with the personality, the emblematic personality of Nelson Mandela, an exceptional African leader and an international symbol. In view of the above, and taking into account both the tangible and intangible attributes of the nominated property, Greece strongly supports the amendment proposed by Zambia for inscribing human rights, liberation, and reconciliation Nelson Mandela legacy sites on the World Heritage List on the basis of the criterion 6. This nomination merits to be, after those presented and approved last year, the 4th inscription of the World Heritage List of the important new category of sites of memory. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to India, to be followed by Rwanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving us the floor again. Following the decisions of the UNESCO General Assembly that African roads to independence are part of the heritage of humanity, in the spirit of the global strategy for a balanced, credible, and representative World Heritage List, and recalling the conclusions of the works of the open-ended working group on the sites of memory of recent conflict that unanimously agreed to the lifting of the moratorium, South Africa's liberation struggle is globally recognized. This struggle tested and helped define humanity's stance on human rights, liberation, and even post-conflict reconciliation. We believe, Mr. Chair, that this nomination is a valuable addition to the World Heritage List, carries the spirit of the Convention, is aligned to the UN Charter, and is timely at this moment in history. The nomination resonates with our long shared heritage with the State Party and the people of South Africa. Our own Bapu Mahatma Gandhi was incarcerated at one of the sites in the serial nomination, the Constitution Hill, formerly the hated Fort Prison, a dungeon of torture and suffering, a site which is now a primary safeguard of human rights and constitutional values. We are encouraged by the explanations provided by the State Party of South Africa demonstrating their adherence to the recommendations provided by ICOMOS. India welcomes the State Party that the State Party has already implemented some of the recommendations and has put in place plans to address the other matters as reflected in the supporting information provided to us and as advised by ICOMOS. India recognizes the need for protective measures to align to specific situations. Having examined the reasons provided by the State Party and considered the outline of their buffering mechanisms, India supports the submission of the State Party on these mechanisms. India is also informed of the repairs as recommended by the ICOMOS to the Sharpeville Police Station, Memorial and Cemetery that they have already begun, and other sites the work has also is going to progress. India therefore believes that fundamentally everything is in place to inscribe the human rights, liberation and reconciliation, the Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites nomination put forward by South Africa at the current 46th session of the committee. Therefore, we support support the change of the decision from referral to inscription. And last, I perfectly align with the opening remarks given by my senior distinguished delegates from Lebanon that how if a site is being ascribed on criterion 6 alone, and this is again repeating the question to ICOMOS, that in such a scenario how authenticity and integrity is to be measured. And we also support that the name of Nelson Mandela, the towering figure, should remain a part of the nomination, name of the nomination, because there have been several instances where the names feature in the names of the property, and I can think of Le Corbusier, Victor Hota, Confucius, Antonio Gaudí, Frank Lloyd Wright, and there are many other names which are also on the list. And in the same way, this name can also feature on the list. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I give the floor to Rwanda, and then we'll take a call depending on the time left.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, site de mémoire associé à des conflits récents par excellence, le site des droits de l'homme, libération et réconciliation, les sites de mémoire de Nelson Mandela témoignent d'une valeur universelle exceptionnelle, dans la mesure où la quête des droits de l'homme a trouvé son âme lorsque la charte de la liberté, élaborée par des représentants de tous les habitants de l'État parti, d'origines différentes, a été lancée à Kliptown, un des éléments constitutifs du bien. L'histoire de la libération de l'Afrique du Sud immortalise la lutte contre les violations des droits de l'homme, la conquête de la liberté et la magnanime réconciliation raciale grâce aux efforts tenaces des dirigeants et de la société civile. Comme il en est défini, les sites associés à des conflits récents sont des sites spécifiques possédant des témoignages matériels en conformité avec les articles 1 et 2 de la Convention qui se rattachent à leur aspect mémoriel et commémorent les victimes de ces conflits. Ainsi, le site proposé représente pour l'État parti un lieu de réconciliation, de recueillement et de réflexion apaisée, jouant un rôle pédagogique afin de promouvoir la culture de la paix et du dialogue. Monsieur le Président, l'authenticité du site se manifeste dans sa capacité à diffuser, préserver et ancrer dans la conscience publique les événements et les souvenirs collectifs liés à son histoire et à son symbolisme. La diversité des éléments constitutifs du bien illustre pleinement les associations clés avec le processus de libération et la conquête de la liberté, ainsi que la réalisation des droits de l'homme et la réconciliation en Afrique du Sud. C'est pour cette raison, Monsieur le Président, que le Rwanda considère que les éléments recommandés pour retrait devraient être inclus en raison de leur profonde réflexion des valeurs des droits de l'homme, de la liberté et de la réconciliation, constitutives de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle du site. Individuellement et collectivement, les 14 éléments du site expriment avec force les valeurs, le courage et la persévérance qui ont conduit à un triomphe mondialement reconnu contre l'adversité. Comme ceci a été mentionné un peu plus tôt dans la matinée, le bien ne devrait pas être amputé d'une partie ou d'un élément constitutif de sa valeur universelle exceptionnelle. Le Rwanda soutient donc l'inscription du bien sous le critère 6 et accueille favorablement la recommandation de l'organe d'évaluation de poursuivre les ateliers avec les parties prenantes concernées, en particulier les communautés environnantes du bien et les autorités locales, afin de les sensibiliser à la nécessité de renforcer la protection de ces éléments. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. It's 3 p.m. It's 1300 hours, 1 p.m. now. So I give the floor to the Director of WHC to make some announcements.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is just to inform the delegates that there will be 3 side events during the lunch break. The first side event is organized by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, ICROM, and the Arab Center for World Heritage Category 2 Center, and it's entitled World Heritage Capacity Building in Saudi Arabia. And this side event will start at 1:30 p.m. in room MR15. The second side event will start immediately after the break and is organized by Brazil, IUCN, and UNESCO, and it is entitled World Heritage, Biodiversity, and Climate, Mobilizing Action and Finance. And this will take place in room MR17. And lastly, the third side event which is co-organized by ICOMOS India and UNESCO, and entitled Preserving World Heritage Amidst Climate Change, Exploring the Intersection of SDG 13, Climate Vulnerability, and World Heritage Sites in the Asia-Pacific region. It will take place immediately after the break, and it will be in room MR 19. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. This meeting will reconvene at 3 p.m.